Congratulations.
On what?
Making Black history.
How I make Black history?
How have you not made Black history?
What you mean?
What you mean? What I mean? Black history, as we say, is something that we live every day.
Right.
So you continuing to make Black history. You're an influencer. History. There's a track of that.
That's what's up.
You led us through at the church. You know, we paid off our mortgage. You're leading us through this new family life center.
Right.
You are a father of 3, grandfather of 1.
That's what's up.
History, legacy.
I know. The Catholic Multicultural Center posted history in the making, and they selected me as like the Black history person. I was like, what? I'm like, yo, I don't know. I guess you don't see it while you're in it.
No.
But it was a true honor, and the older I get, it seemed like the easier I cry.
Yeah, I believe that.
For real.
I agree with that.
I'm like, dang, like shared tears and stuff. Mm-hmm. It was just a little Instagram post, but it was very appreciated.
Yeah, you didn't know I was gonna say that, huh?
No, I did not.
And I didn't know that they posted that.
Yeah.
So look at God bringing that to the forefront, making history.
Yeah, they selected me to be one of the persons they honored throughout the month. I guess they do different people, and they had with me up there when I did the MLK speech. Mm-hmm. They had a picture. It was a pretty nice picture, I must say.
It's nice when they post pictures that you like, isn't it?
You know, sometimes people go to your Facebook page, just take a picture and put it on a flyer. Like, where did you get that picture from?
And it's blurry.
And why did you post that? So it is what it is, but it made me share a little tear.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And you can add it as one of your stones, which for those that are watching us on YouTube, you can see I found a pile of rocks courtesy of Mount Zion Baptist Church parking lot.
I'll let the trustees hear this.
He already saw me.
He saw you. Okay, cool.
I was called a rock thief all the way in, but I plan to return them. I will return them.
Amen.
So we are here talking about Joshua, chapter 4. Tell us, welcome everyone, MCZ Overflow Podcast. I'm your host, Cassaundra Thorpe. I'm here with my forever guest, Reverend Dr. Marcis Allen. We are talking about
what up?
Joshua and the evidence of a victory, and I'll get to my visual aid later on in our conversation. But talk to us. Who is Joshua? Where are we? We're already in chapter 4. What's going on here?
Well, Joshua he's a warrior. He's a fighter. He was with Moses and with the people and fighting, and he takes over leading the people after Moses dies. And he's a man of faith. He trusts in God. In Numbers, when God tells Moses to send spies in the land to scout the land, to see the land that he has already given them, only Joshua and Caleb said, yes, we can take the land. 10 other spies says, no, they are too big for us. We can't handle them. And from that, we see the faith of Joshua, the obedience of Joshua, and we see his courage. And God selects Joshua to be the successor of Moses, because Moses was only able to see the promised land, but he wasn't able to go into the promised land. Mm-hmm. And so Joshua is the one who leads the people to the promised land after they've been in captivity, wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And then he's now the one that's taking them over to the promised land.
Do we know how old Joshua is?
I currently do not know.
Okay. I was just curious, like, if he, like, is he 35? So all he knows is like the wilderness and then coming out, or is he like 55 and like had some?
He's beyond that because he was before they went into the wilderness.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just
yeah, we can do a quick Google search. We need a researcher in here with us when we ask questions like that. You know what I mean? You know, some podcasts they do like, what season did LeBron score this many points and how many minutes? And then somebody on the back is like, this. Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can do that. I don't know who you would like to appoint to be that person, but
You in charge of this.
Excuse me.
I'm a guest here. I'm just have recommendation.
I see. Thank you so much, guest. And so the title of this sermon is called Evidence of a Victory. And in the text, we are talking about how Joshua is telling the men that he had appointed from the children of Israel, which I don't see a number. It doesn't seem like there's like a number of people that he appointed.
It was 12.
It was 12 people that he appointed.
Yeah, one from each tribe.
So one person from each tribe then had to pick up a stone that represented each tribe. So there should be 144 stones.
No, 12 stones.
But each person got 12 stones.
Each person got one stone.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep. Changes some of my questions. That's helpful. That's helpful clarity.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you talk about, and we talk about as a Black community, about how trauma is transferred generationally. We feel the trauma of being abandoned. We feel the trauma of even slavery, which you mentioned by Dr. Joy DeGruy's book. Thank you. We'll have a link in the bio about what that means. And I hadn't realized, like, yes, if we can transfer trauma, we can certainly transfer victories.
Right.
I think we need to do a better job as a community of living in our victories. But I think it can be so hard because the trauma tends to be so much louder.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels more regular because it's coming from a lot of different places, even like at the same time.
Yeah, and you know, with anything, the negativity always get the more light than the positivity. And so, as stated in the sermon, and just hearing this from Pastor G as he celebrated his mom, he was just suggesting about this, how trauma is transferred generationally and it can happen through genetics, epigenetic, how your genes transform and change and all that stuff because of the trauma. But then I like what he said, and I ain't trying to build on the trauma in the sermon. That wasn't my intention. I'm trying to build on the victories, because he also said, if trauma can be passed down, so can victories. And our community, African American people in this country, we have done so much to make sure America is what it is today. And without the free labor of slaves, America wouldn't be what it is today. We're an economic giant right now, but they suggesting that China is going to catch us at some point because we don't have that free labor anymore. you understand what I'm saying? And so, but not only slavery, but inventions, the moral standard in which that we have placed on the nation. That's our leadership, our character, our style. The Harlem Renaissance really changed a whole lot when it comes to our music, our writings, our art, and basketball, football. What would those sports look like if they were not integrated? You know what I'm saying? And so it's just so much that we've offered, and the brilliance behind our people. We should honor that so much more than we know what's obvious: the systemic racism, the oppression, the poverty, the grades in school. Yes, we have a lot of that, but we have a lot of brilliance too that we should attempt to honor more than just the horrible statistics of the pain and the suffering of our community.
Yeah, and you made a note of kind of the history of what we've done. We had a conversation at work yesterday, and we were talking about music, like can artists switch genres? So at this moment in time, Beyonce has dropped 2 new songs post Super Bowl. They are both country songs, like very much country songs. And an Oklahoma radio station said that we are not going to play those songs because they are not country. And then there's another national syndicated radio show that was talking about the history of country music and how it is rooted in Black people. The banjo is from Africa, like that is where the instrument has originated.
Teach me,
and so they brought that over with them, and then that was taken on, or white folks liked it, they took it on, and then they ran, with the country music space of it. And it's a good song, it's a very country song, we're gonna play the country song at that radio station. And we had the conversation about gatekeeping and who gets access to it. I think a lot of people think country music is for white people, not understanding the history behind country music, not to their own fault, and they may defend it as such, but even just understanding where music originated, and who now has the power to share that story and share that narrative, right? And so it continues, those are the stones, right? We'll get into it. But Beyonce has the stones to share of those Black musicians in country who started it, built a foundation upon it, and then seeing how it has transformed to today.
Yeah, First Lady, her favorite genre is country. In the Army, she was in an Army band, so she would have to sing every genre. And her favorite genre is country music.
I love that.
Yeah, she got a little country swing about herself, and so she can sing those songs very well.
Good. We should have her sing a country version of one of our gospel songs. Yeah, that'd be dope, actually. So, First Lady, as you listening, get ready.
She listens a lot.
Okay, so first point. So we asked the question, why do we need evidence of victory? And your first point is because of the impact it will have on the next generation. And what's my question here? So as you're talking about this is a picture of God's grace. Your faith can prevent you from going where God can keep you, but even when He refuses to allow you to go forward, He still takes care of you. Now, if y'all listened before, I get mad when God be stopping me from doing what I want to do. I'm here believing that it's His will, but He's like, no, it's little, in the country terms, hold on, little doggy. So if we are looking at the impact that it will have on the next generation, what is this balance of moving forward and trying to impact, but also holding back because the world's not ready?
Like you said, you gotta just make sure you're in the will of God, and really, you don't understand the impact of what you're doing right now until the next generation asks the question, what do this mean? Right? And so we don't understand the impact we're having on those who are around us. I'm pretty sure Martin Luther King never imagined the impact that he had on this nation and the world. What he died at, 39?
I think so.
Early, he was early 30s when he's doing these speeches. I'm pretty sure he understood what he was doing, but the impact is legendary, legacy that no one would ever be able to change, and it will forever go down. His I Have a Dream speech, one of the best speeches that we've ever heard in history. And so we don't know the impact until I think what God was instructing the people to do when He was telling them to go and get these stones. He says, go get the stones, and your children will ask, what do these stones mean to you? And so what God was doing, He was ensuring that the legacy of Him stopping the waters and them crossing over on dry ground would be a story that would be repeated over and over again. But they had to have some evidence, and the evidence was the stones. And for us, evidence is the degree or or the job, or the relationships, the network, or the net worth.
Come on. Come on.
Those are
yes.
Those are the stones that we'll be able to share that will cause the children to ask, what do these stones mean? And so God is telling them to gather the stones as conversation starters. You feel what I mean?
Okay.
So that they can talk about the goodness of God.
Okay.
And so our lives and as the old preacher would say, who I am, he made me. Where I am, he brought me. What I know, he taught me. What I have, he gave it to me. So if anyone ever asks, how did you get here? That is just me demonstrating to them a stone. And someone will ask, what do these stones mean? And then the question is to you, is not what do they mean to the church, and what do they mean to the village, what do they mean to our people? No, what do they mean to you? And so these are personal questions, and we can be able to express that and share that with the next generation, and it'll have an impact on them, and hopefully in such a way that they want to know who God is.
Yeah. That makes sense. But you got to share your stones, though. You have to have them on display.
Yeah.
Because I think, I'll speak to my family. We're not a promotion type family. And I say that in the sense of, I don't know all of the stones that my mother has, that my cousins have, that my uncle have. I have to think about what I would want to ask, and then I find out. But I don't have any type of leadway into that. And I think that's so interesting, like as families, because I've heard it from other families as well, not just mine and not just Black families, of like, well, we don't talk about that. That's not something we talk about, or I don't know, or
I would say too, as we look at African American people, our history, as you stated last week, it just didn't start in Virginia when the first slave ship docked, but it started in Africa. However, for our history, that's where it starts for us, because that's all we know from that point. And then because we were never respected as actual human beings, none of our accomplishments are recorded. At least as much as our accomplishments are not recorded, and then if they are, someone else is getting the credit for it. You feel what I'm saying? And so we don't have that history to build on top of or to record so that we can be able to say this and that. But there are some things, and I will list it in the sermon of the inventions that we have even today because of African American people taking the chances and with limited to no resources. You feel what I mean? And that's what I'm so astonished by is how our people were able to do such great things, but they didn't have the same level of resources in which we have today. And they had to deal with, they were able to be inventors in being Black. And I think that is tremendous. And it speaks to that it had to be some white people that supported their invention. In order for it to come out and for them to get the credit. And so we also had some allies to be able to help with that, and so that is very appreciative. And when we think about those types of things, and it's just remarkable to me, and we have to be able to share those stories. And my grandmother, I think I said in the sermon though, she wasn't rich. She didn't have the greatest of all things, but she was willing to share her story, how she was a maid and how she went from the back door to the side door to the front door, of how she had to work hard day and night. And when I went to stay the summers with her, I can see early in the morning she'd get up and she gone. to go work for somebody else. And she would tell her stories, and she had this, I think it was like a poem she used to say, like, these old hands, and she just talked about what she did with her hands. And so being able to know those stories and hear those stories is very impactful for the next generation to come, that they don't lose the importance of being who we are. And I think that's happening now, though, because Black people not voting, or Black people not taking pride in what they have and who they are, or not even taking education seriously. I was doing some research for my sermon this week and looking at, I think I put it on my Facebook page, of how after Reconstruction, grandparents, children, and grandchildren were all sitting together learning how to read. Because in the South, it was a law that Black people couldn't know how to read. And now we don't even take advantage of that opportunity now, or be intentional about knowing how to read, or making sure our children are reading books and things like that. That hurts my heart. And to see what our people did just to learn how to read, and we look at some stories, we look at some movies, and we see that people were crucified, lynched, or beaten for learning how to read, because the intention was to keep us as dumb as possible, so that we wouldn't know anything. So we'll always have to depend on the master for everything. And now they don't even have to be intentional about doing that.
That brings up a family story, and then we'll get back into this. So when we grew up in New Hampshire, where I lived, we lived in a condo, and the people across the hall from us, there was a boy, he was a year older than I was. He went to the public school, and so he was learning how to read, but he was sight reading. And for those that don't know what sight reading is, it was just like he had read a book over and over again, and so he knew what the words were in order, almost like memorized the words, versus knowing how to sound them out, and being able to understand like what he was reading. And so with that was a big drive for my mother specifically, who is an avid reader and likes to read, that I want my children to be able to pick up anything and be able to read. So we ended up in private school. And then, because they taught, like, I could read in kindergarten, because that's how that school was teaching us. And I have seen that show up so much in my adult life, especially working with international students and understanding like the different phonetics that come with different countries and cultures and how you pronounce things, and just reading out loud, which sometimes, you get called upon at a conference, hey, can you read this out loud? And there's a word that you see coming up that you're like, oh my goodness. But the foundations of having learned how to read and having that, and to know the sacrifice of our ancestors to do that, I think was very intentional. But again, that's a stone that we don't typically talk about, like at least in my household. Like, I knew my mom wanted us to be able to pick up anything and read. That's why we went to the school that we did. But like the history of having to hide that you knew how to read, and just having to keep that part of yourself hidden is always very it's very saddening, because then today it's a surprise sometimes, or people are astounded and they're like, oh, you're so articulate. I was like, yeah, I can. For real. I can read. So that, I wanted to share that story, because that hit. I watered up, for those that can't see. My eyes watered up a little bit. Pastor saw. So as we're talking about these stones, right, and how God parted the water so that they could cross. God had already parted the waters before, parted the Red Sea with Moses. Now we with Josh.
Yeah.
We're with Josh, and he's going to do it again. But he brought these 12 people, and each of them had to pick up a stone. And as I was thinking about what that process was like, I think in initially it's like, oh, there's 12 stones as I have depicted here, and they just were like, oh, I got one. And I think about the years of, like you talk about, like the water eroding over the rocks so they're smooth. And then I also thought of like how the different sizes of the rocks,
right,
like they're stuck in this mud and this dirt, and they've been sitting there
for years, probably hundreds.
And you gotta move the mud out of the way. You gotta and keep it out of the way, because mud is it's not like you move it and it sits there.
Right.
You move it and it can move back to where it was originally. So just thinking of the intentionality and the energy that went into getting these stones for the next generation, I think pours into us today, and how, okay, you got a degree, you have a house, you created a family from a family that you didn't have, but that took time. That took, like, you saw it, like you saw the rock, it was sitting there, you saw the maybe just the top of the rock, but you had to move the mud around it, you had to remove people from your life, you had to move to a different city, you had to, change jobs, change positions, take something out of your life, add stuff into your life to be able to see this rock.
Wow.
And I think of just like the power that has, and the determination to make sure that you get your rock out, and then also being intentional on the other end to tell the story of that.
That's it. We can close it right there. Give the benediction. That is it. What you paint a great picture.
Thank you.
Because they just didn't walk on the bed of the Jordan River and just pick up a stone. I like that. They had to work. Man, I didn't see that. See, that's why I like talking to you. They had to go and dig deep.
Yeah.
And then be able to recover the stone. And then something I missed, that when I went back and read it again, it was saying, put the stone on your shoulder and carry it. Ooh. So it had to be in a big rock. And they had to labor for it. And the purpose of the rock was to be able to tell the story of how they got it. And like you said, I think the issue that we fall into so much is not enough of us are telling the story of how we made it to where we are. That's good.
Yeah. Do you want to keep going?
Question 2.
Okay.
Let's go to the second point.
So the second point, because of the inspiration it provides to those who have not experienced God themselves. I think this is where we talk about... No, it's later. But with this, it shows how, this is where you talked about your grandmother's hands and how she calls you Ma.
Ma, yeah, that's it.
So yeah, it's that space of inspiration, and as I was reading it, I was thinking about the people, my family specifically, who have inspired me in some way. And just the things that they've done. There's stones that I know and that I don't know. I have cousins that live in Rhode Island, but they were in DC, but because of opportunity, they moved. They moved 6 hours away from where the rest of their family was to be able to create what they needed to for their life.
Right.
I was born in Washington, D.C., and we moved to New Hampshire when I was 3. Where my dad's job, that's where we moved to. He worked in Mass, we lived in New Hampshire, Texas, blah. And so, just like that courage to move from your family nucleus. Right. Because both of my grandmothers were there. My brother, at that time, he was in college. He was coming back home. Their friends were there. Their other cousins there, or in the neighboring area, and they moved 8 hours north, away from all of that. and just thinking about what flourishes in spaces that are unfamiliar, where you really do have to lean on God, and just the impact that has. And it has given me courage to move around for the things that God's called me to do.
Right.
So that's an example of experiencing how I've experienced God for myself, is through that, through those times.
Yeah, again, the goal was for the stone to be able to tell a story.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the children hearing the story inspired them to trust God that they had not experienced themselves.
Yeah.
And so for me, growing up and just seeing my mom and knowing what all she went through to ensure that we had a roof over our head and clothes on our back, to see all of that, but also see that coupled with her worship, with her prayer life, that wasn't just she at home, it was visible that she loved God. You feel what I'm saying? And so for her to show that stone, for her to show me, it presents us with this inspiration to get to know why she loved God so much, even though it looked as if she was going through so much. But it depicted for me what it was really like to trust God. And that's our goal. As Christians, our goal is to ensure that not only we leave a legacy of money and support and love, but we need to leave a legacy of faith, that our kids would be willing to lean and depend on God when we don't make them. That our children will be able to say, I am a Christian, I love God because of what I've seen in somebody else, but also what have I experienced for myself. And so until they're able to really experience God themselves, then you have to be able to tell that story about how you made it, and it's only by the grace of God.
And we gotta do better at telling the story. I think we don't do it here anymore, or I don't know if I was here even when they did it, but I remember my church that I grew up in, before Sunday service would start, you would have testimony. And people would just talk about how God showed up for them that week. And I think we, as a society, as a community, need to do a better job of talking about that. And just like saying it. Like, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't need a time. Maybe it does to start off, but I think in our groups and our circles, we just need to talk about how God is showing up and how we see him in our daily lives.
Definitely. And I think people have taken but have used social media as a platform to be able to tell their story, and that's fine. I'm just telling others about how good God has been to them. And we used to do it on first Sundays. We're doing prayer and praise pretty much, and then we do communion and baptism. But there's also a testimony period where people get up and testify about the goodness of the Lord. I think here we only do it on watch night. So, times are different. People say the wildest things in churches now that we have to be mindful of. Certainly. As we are trying to help people get closer to the Lord.
And like we've talked about in previous podcasts, there's a generation that hasn't been in church.
Right.
So we now have a group coming back. So people are, they are delivering their
totally
testimony.
Vulnerable.
Totally vulnerable.
And it's amazing.
In the best way that they know how. And it takes a lot to just share that out loud.
For real.
So I commend all that do that. I do it behind the microphone to you, that then I post for other people to hear.
For sure.
And to close out this section, I really liked this statement you have of your testimony has the power to inspire others on their own journey. That is so true. Being able to be that example and be a light and having people see that light in you just continues to, one, share God's love, and two, continue to build you up on like your purpose and the intention of why you're here.
Yeah, like even I think we talked about it too, like me trying to work out and then just posting some of the workouts and stuff. People like, oh my God, thank you. You motivating me. I'm like, yo, I'm just doing that. I'm an influencer trying to get my numbers up. You feel what I'm saying? But I'm just trying to, I'm just having fun, I'm not, no purpose, no intention, just having fun. But when people are telling me that, then it causes me to keep going and keep sharing, and hopefully someone else, because health is everything, and many people are choosing to die. When they go to the doctor and they tell them to stop smoking and they continue to smoke, that means they choosing to die. And so we trying to show, or when they tell you your diabetes, you got to cut this out your diet or something, or you need to exercise more. And if I can inspire somebody from doing that, or committed to doing something better for themselves, especially with my testimony, it's good. And that, right, like small pieces like of your testimony, because you even posted about from committing to working out, the consistency with it, and how you've adjusted your diet, what the doctor said. And so I think at times we can think of, going back to the stones, this labor of having to move the mud and dig and lean and maybe take a break and come back. We forget where did my words go? After moving all of that, we forget to talk about the celebration and the triumph that comes with it. That's wonderful.
So yes.
That's wonderful.
So then getting to the last point of, because question, why do we need evidence of victory? Because it invites the unfamiliar to become familiar with God. And I was thinking about this, and I wanted to ask you more so what are some stones that we can point to, because the stones are memorials, right? They're a visual representation of what we've been through, right? What are some stones of Mount Zion that we can point to?
Wow, it's a lot. One is history. We celebrate 113 years. The stone of longevity, endurance, perseverance. This building is a stone that speaks to the generosity of our people in the community. Our worship is a stone, because we live in a predominantly white city, and we pastor the largest predominantly black church, and we stay within our culture. I've had several people come to me and it's like, yo, thank y'all for being a black church, even though we have, our congregation is multicultural, but we still lean on our culture of who we are. So I think that's a stone. I would say our intentionality of honoring families is a stone. I would say our programs to be able to help the least, the left out, the left behind, the least fortunate is a stone that we can leave a legacy of. And people ask, what does these stones mean when it comes to mental health services, after school programming, food pantry, mentorship programming, and programs with the juvenile justice system. I think those stones can be shared, and those stories should be shared to be able to honor those who committed themselves to that work, but also to be able to inspire others. God tells me that these stones will be memorials, and a memorial is just a reminder to reflect, to remember, and to rejoice. of what happened in the past, to honor that in such a way that you do not allow the power of that moment or the light of that moment to go out. And so I think Mount Zion is the pillar of the south side of Madison when it comes to the church. Our work speaks for it. Our love, our longevity, our commitment, all that speaks to who we are, and just this building itself is a stone for the whole community to look at, because they had, before I came, they had a choice to either stay on the south side of Madison or move to the outskirts of the city and build a new building. But they decided they wanted to stay right here in the heart of the community and continue to give the services in which we provide, and the hope and the love and the attention that this community needs.
Yeah.
So I think we're a stone within itself.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing. You know your church. And then just this last point that I have. When we talk testimony, there's always like the celebration, right? Like it's the triumph, the beauty of how God showed up and everything is beautiful and great. But I really like this statement you have. So the problem we face is too many of us are trying to hide our scars. We dress up every Sunday like everything is okay, but your scar is a testimony. The devil thought he had me, he wounded me, but I got away, and I'm here to tell my story. And I think so much we can use, like our scar can be, we can view our scar as the thing that is limiting us versus the thing that is liberating us. Which I think I've used as
alliteration. Like, look at you, girl. Limited, liberated. Come on.
I'm listening to Atomic Habits, and it gave this example of someone who is in a wheelchair, and someone who's able-bodied walked up to them and was like, "Oh, you must feel so confined to your chair," and they're like, "Actually, I feel liberated. This is freedom, because if I didn't have this chair, I would be in a bed." And so just thinking of how like the testimony of, you know, what someone may see as something that's debilitating is actually the thing that is delivering me from where I am. So I just I wanted to point that out as like that's a real recognition and acknowledgement of the fact of what our scars show. Because again, going back to the rocks, someone could have cut themselves. Someone could have dropped one up. Someone could have had a broken toe because they had dropped it. Like we don't know the Bible doesn't tell us about
all the details.
But we could presume that those things happen.
Yeah. And so that, I think that is the point of what God is really telling them. Tell your story. Tell how you made it over. I remember at my mom's wedding, my aunt, she had looked like a hickey to me right here. I was like, "Auntie, you letting your husband put hickeys on you?" She said, "No, nephew. You know, I had breast cancer, and this is the scar from the port." This just the scar from the port when they was giving me chemo. And in that moment, I just was reminded of when I first saw her, and she had cancer. She had lost all her hair. I had been in Afghanistan, and then I moved to Virginia. Then I came back to Tennessee for Thanksgiving, and my aunt came with my mom, and that was my first time seeing her. And that was my first time seeing her with no hair. And when I saw her with no hair, I broke down because I understood what it meant. But to see her in that moment rejoicing with a smile on her face. Yes. And she said, "This is where and not this was where, not this is where. It made me really shout and within myself just the liberation of her knowing that she made it through. She had a scar. She was wounded, but it was not final nor fatal. And so that, and oftentimes we have scars, people cover it up. People hide it. But I think we need to try our best to share our scars with people, and so they can know the power of God. And those who are unfamiliar with God will become familiar with His grace, because they can see it in you and what you went through and how you endured, but most of all, how you overcame and came out of that.
That's great.
That's good. That's a good place to end it.
That's a great place to end. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please continue to check out our website, mtzlife.com, for more updates and details, and check back here for new episodes. And until then, stay marvelous, fabulous, and blessed. Peace.
Peace. God bless. Take care.